Welcome to Book Nibbles. Big ideas, small bites. Malcolm X's life, as captured in his autobiography, unfolds as a story of transformation, struggle, awakening, and ultimately martyrdom, told with a rawness that forces the reader to witness the social and personal forces that shaped him. His journey begins in a world already defined by race and oppression, even before he fully understood it. Born Malcolm Little in Omaha, Nebraska in 1925, he entered life in a household under siege. His father, Earl Little, a strong-willed Baptist preacher and follower of Marcus Garvey, preached black pride and self-reliance, ideas far ahead of his time, but threatening to the white establishment. Malcolm recalls how the family endured constant harassment from white supremacists, the Ku Klux Klan, and local racists. These hostile forces saw his father's fiery advocacy as dangerous. His father's death, officially ruled a streetcar accident, bore all the marks of murder, likely a lynching disguised as misfortune. His mother, Louise, was left with 8 children and little support, and the family spiraled downward. She was eventually institutionalized, broken by poverty, harassment, and the crushing weight of raising children alone under relentless racial hostility. The system that tore the family apart, welfare agencies, courts, and social workers, foreshadowed what Malcolm would later describe as the broader machinery of racial oppression in America. From these early years, Malcolm absorbed both the strength of his parents' independence and the bitterness of a world set against them. Shuffled through foster homes and schools, he experienced firsthand the subtle but devastating ways racism shaped Black lives. In school, he excelled, especially in English and public speaking, and at one point dreamed of becoming a lawyer. Yet when he confided this to a teacher, the man dismissed his ambition, telling him that being a lawyer was no realistic goal for a nigger. This crushing moment planted in Malcolm the first seeds of disillusionment with white society's willingness to let Black people aspire to more than menial roles. He left school after the 8th grade, already alienated from the promises of the mainstream. As a teenager, Malcolm moved to Boston to live with his half-sister Ella, who was strong, independent, and proud of her Black identity. Boston opened new worlds to him. The vibrant nightlife of Roxbury, the style and swagger of young Black men, the music, and the atmosphere of rebellion. Here Malcolm began to craft a new persona, shedding the vulnerability of his childhood. He conked his hair with harsh chemicals to mimic white men's straight hair, wore flashy zoot suits, and immersed himself in the street culture of hustlers, pimps, gamblers, and musicians. He also worked menial jobs, shined shoes at dance halls, and absorbed the energy of swing and jazz. His hunger for status and identity pushed him further into the street life. When he moved to Harlem, New York, his experiences intensified. Harlem in the 1940s was alive with Black culture, but also rife with crime and vice. Malcolm became Detroit Red, known for his reddish hair and sharp clothes. He navigated the world of hustlers with quick wit, sharp instincts, and a willingness to take risks. He ran numbers, dealt drugs, robbed homes, and hung out with the underworld figures who controlled Harlem's night economy. His relationships with white women, which he flaunted, added another layer of rebellion, defying both Black community norms and white America's taboos. Yet beneath the surface glamour, his life was spiraling downward, fueled by cocaine, alcohol, and the constant danger of hustling. Eventually, his recklessness caught up with him. At age 20, he was arrested for burglary in Boston and sentenced to 10 years in prison. This became the turning point of his life. Prison stripped away his illusions and forced him into reflection. At first, he was defiant and angry, but then, through correspondence and encouragement from his siblings, especially his brother Reginald, he was introduced to the teachings of the Nation of Islam. Its leader, Elijah Muhammad, preached that the white man was the devil, the oppressor of the Black race, and that true liberation required separation, self-respect, and obedience to God. The Nation's message gave Malcolm a framework to understand the pain of his childhood and the systemic oppression he had witnessed. It explained his father's death his mother's breakdown, his own failures, and the fate of countless black men trapped in cycles of crime and poverty. But Malcolm did not accept this faith blindly. He was voraciously curious and disciplined. In prison, he devoured books, teaching himself history, philosophy, religion, and law. He read about African civilizations, slavery, and colonialism, and this education opened his mind to a broader vision of the world. He copied entire dictionaries by hand to expand his vocabulary. His intellectual transformation became as radical as his spiritual one. He renounced cigarettes, gambling, pork, and all the trappings of his old life. Prison became his university, and Elijah Muhammad became his guide. When he was released in 1952, Malcolm emerged as a new man, Malcolm X. He rejected his family's surname Little, seeing it as a slave name imposed by white masters, and replaced it with X, symbolizing the lost name of his true African ancestors. This act of renaming was both personal and political, a declaration of independence from the identity forced upon him. His charisma, discipline, and intellect quickly drew attention within the Nation of Islam. He rose rapidly as a minister, establishing new temples across the country, from Detroit to Boston, Philadelphia, and Harlem. He became Elijah Muhammad's most visible spokesman, attracting thousands of new members, many of them people society had discarded, prisoners, addicts, hustlers, who found hope in the nation's strict moral code and empowering message. Malcolm's fiery speeches, laced with blunt truths and sharp criticism of white America, electrified audiences. He condemned integration as a false promise, arguing instead for separation and self-sufficiency. He rejected nonviolence, the cornerstone of Martin Luther King Jr.'s civil rights movement, insisting instead on self-defense. If someone laid a hand on a black man, that man had every right to defend himself by any means necessary. He ridiculed the idea that the oppressed should love their oppressors, calling it a tool of control. His biting words made him a hero to many black Americans and a threat in the eyes of the mainstream media and government. Under his influence, the Nation of Islam grew exponentially. He cultivated discipline among members: no drinking, no drugs, no fornication, no pork, strict dress codes, and loyalty to the nation. Yet beneath the success, tensions grew. Malcolm revered Elijah Muhammad as a prophet-like figure, but eventually he learned of Muhammad's personal failings, especially allegations of sexual misconduct with young secretaries, which contradicted the strict moral code preached to followers. This discovery shook Malcolm to the core. At the same time, his growing popularity made some within the nation jealous, including Elijah Muhammad himself, who began to see Malcolm's influence as a potential threat to his authority. The breaking point came after President John F. Kennedy's assassination in 1963. While most leaders offered words of condolence, Malcolm, asked for his reaction, remarked that it was a case of the chickens coming home to roost. The media exploded with outrage, and Elijah Muhammad silenced Malcolm for 90 days. This punishment made it clear to Malcolm that he was being pushed aside. Disillusioned by both Muhammad's hypocrisy and the nation's internal politics, Malcolm broke away in 1964, founding his own organization, Muslim Mosque Incorporated, and later the Organization of Afro-American Unity. Freed from the rigid doctrine of the nation, Malcolm's worldview began to evolve dramatically. He made the pilgrimage to Mecca, the Hajj, which transformed his understanding of race and humanity. For the first time, he witnessed Muslims of all colors, black, white, brown, Arab, Asian, praying together as equals. He experienced a sense of brotherhood that transcended skin color, something he had thought impossible. This revelation shook the foundations of his previous beliefs. He no longer saw all white people as devils. Instead, he began to distinguish between oppressive systems and individuals of goodwill. He returned from Mecca with a new name, El-Hajj Malik El-Shabazz, and a broader vision. The struggle was not simply about black versus white, but about human rights, justice, and dignity for all oppressed people worldwide. This shift, however, did not mean he softened his critique of America. If anything, his criticisms grew sharper. He spoke of racism as a cancer embedded in the structure of America, one that could not be cured by superficial reforms. He called out hypocrisy in U.S. foreign policy, pointing out that America preached democracy abroad while oppressing Black citizens at home. He sought to bring the Black struggle before international bodies like the United Nations, framing it not merely as a civil rights issue, but as a human rights violation. This move posed a direct threat to America's image on the global stage, making him an even greater target for government surveillance and hostility. As Malcolm's message evolved, he faced increasing danger. The Nation of Islam, feeling betrayed, targeted him with threats and harassment. His house was firebombed while his family slept inside, narrowly escaping death. The FBI and other agencies tracked his every move. Yet despite the dangers, he continued to speak with fearless honesty, knowing that his life was at risk. In his final months, his speeches reflected both urgency and a sense of inevitability. He often hinted that he would not live long, but insisted that the truth had to be spoken regardless of the cost. On February 21, 1965, while preparing to address an audience at the Audubon Ballroom in Harlem, Malcolm was assassinated by gunmen connected to the Nation of Islam. His death at the age of 39 shocked the world, but in a deeper sense, Malcolm's life had already left an indelible mark. He had transformed from a street hustler into one of the most important voices of the 20th century, a man who gave millions of Black Americans the courage to reject shame, embrace pride, and demand justice. The autobiography, told to Alex Haley, captures not just the events of his life, but the constant evolution of his mind. It is a story of someone who never stopped questioning, never stopped growing, and never accepted the lies imposed on him. His ability to transform, from Malcolm Little to Detroit Red, from Malcolm X to El Hajj Malik El Shabazz, embodied the possibility of radical change. His journey illustrates how personal pain, systemic oppression, and relentless curiosity can converge to produce a leader who speaks with unmatched authenticity. What makes his story so compelling is not just his defiance, but his willingness to admit mistakes. He openly recounts his days as a criminal, his early hatreds, and even his misplaced faith in Elijah Muhammad. This honesty gives his testimony credibility, showing that growth requires acknowledging where one has been. He offers readers an example of how education, discipline, and faith can completely reshape a person's destiny. Throughout the autobiography, there are countless moments that serve as lessons. His school teacher's dismissal shows the power of words to crush or inspire dreams. His time in prison demonstrates the potential for education to liberate the mind. His rejection of his slave name and adoption of X symbolizes the importance of defining oneself rather than accepting imposed identities. His pilgrimage to Mecca highlights the necessity of remaining open to new truths, even when they contradict one's past beliefs. His call to frame the Black struggle as a human rights issue illustrates the importance of connecting local battles to global movements. Malcolm's story remains relevant because it forces readers to confront uncomfortable truths. He exposes the deep roots of racism in America, the hypocrisy of systems that claim equality while practicing oppression, and the danger of settling for half measures. At the same time, he offers a model of courage, transformation, and intellectual honesty. His life is both a warning and an inspiration. A warning of what happens when societies crush human potential, and an inspiration for how individuals can rise above circumstances to challenge the world. In the end, the autobiography is not simply about Malcolm X. It is about the struggle of Black people in America, the possibility of redemption, and the pursuit of truth no matter the cost. It is a story that blends tragedy and triumph, rage and love, faith and doubt. It forces the reader to see that identity is not fixed, but forged through struggle, reflection, and constant re-examination. And it leaves us with the enduring image of a man who refused to be silent, who spoke truth to power until the very end, and whose voice continues to echo long after his death. And that's it. The Autobiography of Malcolm X, as told to Alex Haley. Thanks for listening to Book Nibbles. If you enjoyed this bite-sized book, don't forget to subscribe for more quick, insightful summaries. See you in the next nibble.